The manila envelope hit my kitchen table with a dull thud that seemed to echo through my entire body. My father-in-law Ian's perfectly manicured hand rested on top of it, his gold wedding band catching the morning light. "This house will be ours by the month's end," he said, lips curling into what I can only describe as a predatory smile. "And Travis will finally have a proper family. I'm Zoe, and until 6 months ago, I thought I understood what family meant. Then my husband Casey died in a car accident, and his parents showed their true colours, faster than autumn leaves turning brown. Travis has a proper family," I said, my hands gripping the back of my kitchen chair so hard my knuckles turned white. "He has me." Deborah, my mother-in-law, gave that little laugh of hers, the one that sounds like wind chimes made of ice. "Dear, you can barely afford the property taxes on this house. How do you expect to raise our grandson on a teacher's salary?" I glanced toward the stairs, grateful that Travis was at kindergarten. He didn't need to witness this ambush. "I managed just fine. Casey left us well provided for." "Did he?" Ian slid the envelope toward me. "Because according to these documents, the house was never properly transferred into your name. A terrible oversight." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were property documents, legal papers, and what appeared to be a notice of eviction. The dates, signatures, everything looked official, but something felt off. "This is impossible," I said, scanning the papers. "Casey and I signed the deed transfer together last year." "Clearly there was an error in processing," Ian said, straightening his designer tie. "These things happen. But don't worry, Anne. We'll make sure Travis maintains his standard of living." "By taking him away from his mother?" My voice cracked, but I forced myself to meet Ian's gaze. "He's 5 years old. He needs me." Deborah moved closer, her expensive perfume suffocating me. "We have resources, Zoe. The best lawyers, character witnesses, financial statements showing your inadequacies as a provider. Do you really want to put Travis through a lengthy court battle?" "Get out!" The words came out barely above a whisper. "Excuse me?" Ian's smile vanished. "I said get out of my house." I straightened up, finding strength I didn't know I had. "Now." Ian gathered his coat, that smug expression returning. "Our lawyer will be in touch. Do consider what's best for Travis. A settlement could make this easier for everyone." After they left, I sank into my chair, the papers scattered before me like fallen soldiers. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Andrea. "How did it go?" I snapped a photo of the documents and sent it to her. Within seconds, my phone rang. "These look suspicious," Andrea said without preamble. "The notary stamp is dated for a Sunday. Government offices are closed on Sundays, Zoe." Hope flickered in my chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'm coming over after work and we're going through every piece of paper Casey ever touched." I ended the call and walked to the living room where Casey's photo sat on the mantel. He was smiling, holding Travis on his shoulders at the beach last summer. "Your parents are trying to take everything we built," I whispered to his image. "But I won't let them. I promise." My phone buzzed again. A reminder to pick up Travis from school. I grabbed my keys, but before leaving I gathered every document Ian had left and locked them in my home office. Something about those papers nagged at me, like a loose thread begging to be pulled. As I drove to Travis's school, I thought about Casey's last words to me. "Keep an eye on Dad's paperwork." At the time, I'd assumed he was delirious from his injuries. Now, I wondered if he'd been trying to warn me. I arrived at the school just as the children were being dismissed. Travis ran to me, his backpack bouncing, dark curls wild from play. "Mommy, I drew a dinosaur today." I hugged him tight, breathing in his familiar scent of crayons and apple juice. "That's wonderful, baby. Why don't you tell me all about it on the way home?" As he chatted excitedly in the back seat, I made a silent vow. Ian and Deborah might have money and influence, but I had something stronger. The truth that Casey tried to share, hidden somewhere in our home. And I was going to find it. Andrea spread the documents across my dining room table while Isla paced behind us, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The house was quiet. Travis had finally fallen asleep upstairs after an hour of "just one more story, Mommy." Look at this, Andrea said, pointing to a line on the eviction notice. The property ID number doesn't match your deed. It's off by 1 digit. Isla leaned over our shoulders. Could that be just a typo? A typo on legal documents that could determine custody of a child? Andrea shook her head. No way! This was rushed. Sloppy work. I reached for my coffee, now cold from hours of document review. So they're definitely forged? Oh, they're forged all right, Andrea confirmed, her lawyer mode in full swing. But proving it in court, that's another matter. Ian has connections with every major law firm in the city. Except yours, Isla pointed out. Andrea smiled grimly. True, but I'm just starting out, going against someone like Rodney Hudson. He's been winning custody battles since I was in middle school. My stomach churned at the mention of Ian's attorney. I'd only met him once at Casey's funeral, where he'd handed me his business card with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. There has to be something else, I said, standing up to stretch. Casey... He tried to tell me something about Ian's paperwork before he died. Isla stopped pacing. What exactly did he say? Just to keep an eye on his dad's paperwork. He was in and out of consciousness at the hospital, so I didn't. My voice caught. I didn't think much of it then. Where did Casey keep his work stuff? Andrea asked, already heading toward my home office. Most of it's in boxes in the garage, I said, following her. He was always bringing work home, especially in the last few months before the accident. The garage was cold and smelled of cardboard and motor oil. 3 large boxes marked work sat in the corner, untouched since Casey's death. I couldn't bring myself to go through them before. Start with the most recent, Andrea instructed, pulling out her phone to use as a flashlight. We began sorting through papers, financial reports, meeting minutes, investment portfolios. Most of it looked like standard business documents, until Isla held up a USB drive. Found this taped to the bottom of a folder, she said. Andrea plugged it into her laptop, and we huddled around the screen. Most files were encrypted, but one opened, a spreadsheet showing wire transfers to offshore accounts. Holy shit, Andrea whispered. These amounts, they're massive. And look at the dates. They align perfectly with the company's major property acquisitions. What does that mean? I asked, though I was starting to understand. It means, Andrea said slowly, that Ian might have been cooking the books, inflating purchase prices, skimming off the top. This could be evidence of serious fraud. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. My blood ran cold as I read it. Back off now, or Travis won't be the only thing you lose. I showed it to Andrea and Isla. Save it, Andrea said immediately. Screenshot it, email it to yourself, everything. This is harassment. They're scared, Isla realized. They know you might have something on them. I sank onto a nearby workbench. What do I do? If they're willing to threaten me? You fight back, Andrea said firmly. These documents they're using against you. They're not just forged. They're desperate. Ian's trying to silence you before you figure out what Casey knew. But Travis is safer with you fighting than giving in, Isla interrupted. Think about it. If they're willing to do this to you, what would they teach him? She was right. I thought about Travis upstairs, peaceful in his race car bed, clutching the stuffed dinosaur Casey gave him for his last birthday. I thought about Ian's smug smile, Deborah's cold laugh, and Casey's final warning. Okay, I said, standing up straighter. What's our next move? Andrea was already typing on her laptop. First, we document everything. Then I have a friend in the DA's office who specializes in financial crimes. We need to move carefully, build our case before they realize what we have. I can help too, Isla added. My firm handles PR for half the judges in the circuit. I hear things. Could be useful to know which judges might be in Ian's pocket. For the first time since Ian dropped that envelope on my table, I felt hope. It wasn't just me against them anymore. I had allies, evidence, and most importantly, the truth on my side. Casey knew, I said softly. He was trying to expose them, wasn't he? Andrea squeezed my hand. And now you'll finish what he started. We worked through the night, organizing documents and building our case. Somewhere above us, Travis slept soundly. unaware that his mother was preparing for the fight of her life. The attic was stifling even at midnight. I shifted another dusty box, my flashlight beam catching cobwebs and forgotten memories. Travis was at a sleepover with his best friend. The first night I'd let him out of my sight since Ian's threats began. "Casey, where did you hide it?" I whispered, remembering his odd behaviour in the weeks before the accident. He'd spent hours up here claiming to be organising old files. My hand brushed against something solid behind a stack of photo albums. A leather-bound journal, its spine cracked with age. I'd never seen it before. My phone rang, making me jump. Andrea's name flashed on the screen. "They filed the custody papers," she said without preamble. "Hearing set for 3 weeks from now." 3 weeks? My voice echoed in the empty attic. "That's too soon." "They're pushing for emergency custody, claiming you're mentally unstable from grief." Andrea's voice hardened. "They've got a psychiatrist ready to testify." "A psychiatrist who's never even met me, I'm guessing." "Probably on Ian's payroll." Papers shuffled on her end. "Have you found anything useful up there?" I opened the journal, my flashlight illuminating Casey's familiar handwriting. "Maybe. I found some kind of diary." "Hold on." The first few entries were mundane. Business meetings, lunch appointments. Then, halfway through, "Dad's been moving money again. Same pattern as before. Need to track the transfers." "Andrea," I said, my heart racing, "listen to this. Found proof of the shell companies. Everything leads back to the Cayman accounts. Key in office safe." "Key? What key?" I flipped through more pages, scanning entries. Wait, there's more. "Dad threatened to cut me out if I don't stay quiet. Told him I have copies of everything. He doesn't know where." "The USB drive we found isn't enough," Andrea said. "We need those copies." A loose photograph fell from between the pages. Casey in his office, standing next to a large painting of a sailboat. I'd always hated that painting. He'd insisted on hanging it despite it clashing with everything else in the room. "I need to check something," I said, hurrying down the attic stairs. "Call you back." In Casey's office, the painting hung exactly as he'd left it. I'd never moved it. Couldn't bring myself to change anything in here. Now I lifted it carefully from the wall. Behind it was a small wall safe. "Clever, Casey," I whispered, running my fingers along the edges. But where was the key? I returned to the journal, reading more carefully. One entry caught my eye. "Moved everything to the new safe. Key's where we first met, she'll understand." Where we first met. My mind raced back 7 years, to that little coffee shop downtown. Casey had been reading a book. I ran to our bedroom bookshelf, pulling out his old copy of The Great Gatsby. There, pressed between the pages, was a small silver key. My hands shook as I called Andrea. "I found it," I said. "But I haven't opened the safe yet. Should I wait?" "No," she said firmly. "We need to know what we're dealing with. Put me on speaker." The key slid in perfectly. Inside the safe were folders, USB drives, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. "There's so much here," I said, spreading the contents on Casey's desk. "Financial records, photographs of documents." "Andrea, these look like private banking records from the Cayman Islands. Take photos of everything right now, then pack it all up and bring it to my office first thing tomorrow." A car door slammed outside. I froze. "Someone's here," I whispered. "Get everything back in the safe," Andrea ordered. "Now, text me when they're gone." I shoved the documents back, locked the safe, and barely had the painting back in place when the doorbell rang. My heart pounding, I went downstairs. Deborah stood on my porch, perfectly coiffed despite the late hour. "Isn't it past your bedtime?" I asked, not opening the screen door. "We need to talk," she said, "about Travis's future." "There's nothing to talk about." She sighed dramatically. "Ian's willing to be generous, Zoe. A substantial settlement. Enough for you to start fresh somewhere else." "You mean enough to abandon my son?" "Be reasonable," she snapped, mask slipping. "You can't win this. Ian never loses." I thought of the safe upstairs, filled with Casey's careful documentation of their crimes. "There's a first time for everything," After she left, I texted Andrea. Safe for now, but they're getting desperate. Her reply came instantly. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we go to war. I returned to Casey's office, touching the painting gently. You knew, didn't you? You were protecting us all along. For the first time since finding the journal, I opened the envelope with my name on it. Inside was a single sentence. Trust yourself. You're stronger than they know. Andrea's office buzzed with energy as she spread Casey's documents across her conference table. Isla sat beside me, taking notes on her laptop while Travis played with his toys in the corner, headphones on, watching cartoons on my iPad. This is incredible, Andrea said, holding up a document. Look at these signatures. Ian was authorizing transfers to fake companies, then routing the money back through personal accounts. In English, please, I said, glancing at Travis to make sure he wasn't listening. Your father-in-law was stealing from his own company, Isla translated. Millions of dollars hidden in offshore accounts. And Casey documented all of it, Andrea added. Bank statements, wire transfers, even photos of meetings with sketchy investors who were really just Ian's cronies. My hands trembled as I picked up another folder. Will it be enough? To stop the custody case? Absolutely. To send Ian to prison? Even better. The conference room door burst open. Rodney Hudson stood there, his expensive suit as impeccable as his timing was suspicious. Ladies, he said smoothly, having a little meeting. I moved to block Travis from view, but Rodney had already spotted him. Ah, young Travis. How convenient. I need to document his current living conditions anyway. Get out, Andrea snapped, standing. This is a private meeting. Private? With evidence pertaining to my clients scattered all over the table. Rodney pulled out his phone. Mind if I take a few pictures? Isla stepped forward. Try it, and I'll have security up here so fast your head will spin. I'm still on the building's board of directors. Rodney's smile faltered slightly. Ian wanted me to deliver a message. A final offer. Walk away now. Take $2 million and we forget everything. Everything, I laughed, surprising myself with how cold it sounded. Like how Ian embezzled company funds, or how he forged documents to try stealing my house. Careful, Mrs. Santiago. Accusations like that could be considered defamatory. Only if they're false, Andrea countered. Now leave, or I'll file for a restraining order. After Rodney left, Isla made a call to building security while Andrea quickly packed up the documents. They know we have something, she said. We need to move fast. I'm filing these with the DA today. What about Travis? I asked, watching my son happily playing, oblivious to the tension around him. He stays with you, Andrea assured me. No judge will grant custody to grandparents under federal investigation for fraud. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Final warning. Take the deal. I showed it to Andrea and Isla. Perfect, Andrea said, snapping a photo of my screen. More evidence of harassment. They're digging their own grave. I don't understand, I said. Why not just let me keep the house? Why try to take Travis? Isla's eyes widened. Because Travis is Casey's heir. If anything happens to Ian, Travis would inherit controlling interest in the company, Andrea finished, with you as his guardian until he's of age. They're not just trying to hurt me, I realized. They're trying to protect their scheme. Mom, Travis called out. Can we get lunch? I'm hungry. Of course, baby. I turned to Andrea. What's our next move? I'm meeting my contact at the DA's office in an hour. Isla, can you get Zoe and Travis somewhere safe, just in case? Isla nodded. My lake house. It's gated, private security. They'll never find them there. I gathered Travis's things, trying to make it seem like an adventure rather than an escape. Hey, buddy, how about a little vacation? Aunt Isla has a house with a huge yard and a tire swing. Really? Can I bring Rex? He hugged his dinosaur toy tighter. Of course you can. As we left through the back entrance, I saw Rodney in the lobby, talking intensely on his phone. He didn't see us. In Isla's car, Travis fell asleep almost immediately. Rex clutched to his chest. I watched the city fade away through the window, thinking about Casey's words in his letter. Trust yourself. You're stronger than they know. My phone buzzed again. Andrea this time. DA is reviewing everything. Says it's biggest fraud case she's seen in years. Stay safe. We'll call tonight. Isla glanced at me. You okay? Yeah, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. For the first time since Casey died, I feel like I'm doing exactly what he would have wanted. Which is? I looked back at Travis, peaceful in his car seat. Protecting our son and making sure justice is served. Even if it means sending your in-laws to prison? Especially then. I touched the window, watching rain begin to fall. They chose money over family. Now they'll lose both. The highway stretched ahead, leading us towards safety while behind us, Andrea prepared to unleash the truth Casey died protecting. The storm was coming, and for once I wasn't afraid of getting caught in it. 3 days at Isla's lake house felt like living in a different world. Travis spent his days exploring the sprawling yard while I jumped at every unexpected sound. The trial was just 2 weeks away. "Mommy, look what I found!" Travis ran up to the porch, holding something in his muddy hands. "It's like Daddy's." My heart stopped. In his palm lay a silver key, similar to the one I'd found in Casey's book. "Where did you get that, sweetie?" "By the big tree, there's a box there." I followed him to an ancient oak near the property line. Half buried in its roots was a small metal lockbox, weathered but intact. My phone rang. Andrea. "Turn on the news," she said without greeting. Channel 7. I rushed inside, Travis trailing behind me. Isla was already watching, her face pale. On screen, Ian stood outside his company headquarters, surrounded by reporters. The ticker below read, "Major fraud investigation launched. CEO denies allegations." "The accusations are baseless," Ian was saying, his usual confidence wavering. "This is a family matter being twisted by—" The feed cut to a reporter. "Sources say evidence of massive financial fraud was delivered to the DA's office earlier this week, including documents allegedly collected by the CEO's late son, Casey Santiago, before his death last year." "They're running scared," Andrea said in my ear. "But Zoe, be careful. I just got a copy of a letter they're planning to submit to the court." "What letter?" "They're claiming Casey was mentally unstable before his death, that he fabricated the evidence during a breakdown." Travis tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can I show you the box now?" "1 second, baby." I turned back to the phone. "They're trying to discredit him?" "It gets worse. They've got a psychiatrist willing to testify that grief has made you paranoid, that you're clinging to Casey's delusions." Isla muted the TV. "Zoe, Travis found something you need to see." I followed them back outside to the oak tree. The lockbox was small, rusty around the edges. The key Travis found fit perfectly. Inside was a USB drive and a sealed envelope dated 1 week before Casey's accident. My hands shook as I opened it. "Andrea," I said into the phone, "Casey was here, at Isla's house. He left something." "What? That's impossible. How would he—" "Because I told him he could use it," Isla interrupted. "He called me last year, said he needed a safe place to store some documents. I gave him the gate code, but never knew if he came." I scanned Casey's letter, my breath catching. Andrea, he knew. He knew they might try to discredit him. This letter, it's a sworn statement about Ian's fraud, witnessed by a federal judge. "A judge? Which one?" "Judge Margaret Reynolds." Andrea gasped. "Reynolds is handling your custody case. She's known for being incorruptible. That's why Ian's been trying to get it moved to another court." Travis, bored with adult conversation, had wandered back to his play area. I watched him through tears, seeing so much of Casey in his movements. "There's more," I said, reading further. "Bank account numbers, dates, names of everyone involved. Casey created a complete backup of everything." "This changes everything," Andrea said. "They can't claim he was unstable if he was clear-headed enough to get a federal judge involved. And Reynolds will have to recuse herself now. She's a potential witness." My phone beeped with an incoming text. Unknown number again. "You think you're safe at the lake house? Think again." "Andrea," I said, my voice tight, "they know where we are. Get out of there. Now. I'm calling the police." Isla was already moving. "My car's packed." I always keep emergency bags ready. I ran to Travis. Baby, we need to go on another adventure, okay? But I like it here. I know, but... Headlights swept across the lawn as a car pulled up to the gate. Isla. Back door, she said calmly, grabbing Travis's hand. I have a boat ready at the dock. Standard evacuation procedure. You have an evacuation procedure? She smiled grimly. I work in corporate PR. You'd be surprised what you need to prepare for. We slipped out through the back just as someone started pounding on the front door. Travis, sensing our fear, stayed quiet as we hurried down the path to the private dock. The boat was small but fast. As Isla steered us across the dark lake, I held Travis close, the lockbox clutched in my free hand. Where are we going? He whispered. Somewhere safe, I promised, watching the lights of pursuing vehicles reflect off the water behind us. And this time, we're not running away. We're running toward something. What? I thought of Casey's letter, of Judge Reynolds, of all the evidence now safely in our possession. Justice, baby. We're running toward justice. My phone lit up with a message from Andrea. Police en route. Judge Reynolds wants to meet. First thing tomorrow. We've got them. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I sat beside Andrea, Travis safely tucked away with Isla at a secure location. Ian and Deborah sat across the aisle, their perfect postures betraying no hint of the chaos they'd caused at the lake house last night. Judge Reynolds entered, her stern expression revealing nothing about our early morning meeting where she'd reviewed Casey's sworn statement. Your Honour, Rodney began, standing smoothly. Given recent developments, we request a change of venue due to potential. Denied, Judge Reynolds cut him off. This court is well aware of the circumstances. Proceed with your case. Rodney recovered quickly, launching into a practiced speech about my supposed instability. Mrs. Santiago has exhibited increasingly paranoid behaviour since her husband's death. She's made outlandish accusations, fled with the child to hidden locations. Objection, Andrea interrupted. Counsel is presenting speculation as fact. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said. Mr. Hudson, do you have any actual evidence of Mrs. Santiago's alleged instability? We have an expert witness, Your Honour. Dr. Phillips. A grey-haired man in an expensive suit took the stand. I'd never seen him before in my life. Dr. Phillips, you've evaluated Mrs. Santiago's mental state. Based on observed behaviours and reported incidents. Objection, Andrea stood. The witness has never met my client. This is hearsay. Your Honour, Rodney pressed, Dr. Phillips is a leading expert in grief-induced paranoia. Judge Reynolds leaned forward. Has Dr. Phillips ever treated Mrs. Santiago? Well, no, but... Then his testimony is inadmissible. Next witness. I watched Ian's face redden as his carefully constructed case began crumbling. Deborah clutched her designer handbag so tightly her knuckles turned white. Your Honour, Rodney tried again. We have documentation showing Mrs. Santiago's financial inability to provide. Actually, Andrea interrupted, approaching the bench with a folder, we have evidence that the financial documents previously submitted to this court were fraudulent. The gallery buzzed with whispers. Ian stood abruptly. Your Honour, I object to these baseless accusations. Sit down, Mr. Santiago, Judge Reynolds ordered. Ms. Butler, proceed. Andrea projected a document onto the courtroom screen. This is a bank statement submitted by the plaintiffs, showing Mrs. Santiago's supposed financial distress. And this, she switched images, is the actual statement from the bank, showing a very different picture. These documents are stolen, Rodney protested. Obtained illegally. They were obtained, Andrea said clearly, by Casey Santiago before his death, along with evidence of extensive financial fraud perpetrated by Ian Santiago. Evidence that was documented and witnessed by... She paused meaningfully. This very court. The room erupted. Judge Reynolds banged her gavel. Order! Your Honour, Rodney sputtered. This is highly irregular. What's irregular, Judge Reynolds said, is attempting to use fraudulent documents to gain custody of a child while under federal investigation. Ian stood again. You demand nothing, Judge Reynolds snapped. Sit down, or I'll have you removed. She turned to me. Mrs. Santiago, do you have anything to add? I stood, my voice steadier than I expected. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to submit Casey's final letter into evidence, the one he wrote explaining exactly why he feared his parents might try to take our son. Rodney jumped up. Objection. This is all hearsay from a deceased witness whose testimony was properly documented and notarized, Andrea countered, by Judge Reynolds herself. The courtroom fell silent. Ian and Deborah exchanged panicked looks as their lawyer frantically flipped through his papers. Furthermore, Andrea continued, we have evidence of ongoing harassment, including threats made against my client last night when the plaintiff's associates trespassed on private property. Judge Reynolds studied the room for a long moment. I've heard enough. This court finds no merit in the plaintiff's petition for custody. Moreover, given the evidence of fraudulent documents and witness intimidation, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office. Your Honor, Rodney protested. In addition, she continued, I'm issuing an immediate restraining order preventing Ian and Deborah Santiago from coming within 500 feet of Mrs. Santiago or her son. I heard Deborah's sharp intake of breath, saw Ian's face turn from red to ashen. This case is dismissed. The gavel banged with finality. Mrs. Santiago, you are free to go. As court officers approached Ian and Deborah, Andrea squeezed my hand. It's over. Not quite, I said, watching my in-laws being read their rights. The criminal case is just beginning. My phone buzzed. A photo from Isla, showing Travis playing happily in their secure location, blissfully unaware that his future had just been secured. Casey would be proud, Andrea said softly. He knew, I replied, gathering my things as Ian and Deborah were led away. He knew exactly what would happen. That's why he left us a path to follow. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras, but I barely noticed them. All I could think about was getting to Travis, holding him close, and finally starting our new life, free from threats, free from fear, and full of the truth Casey had fought to protect. The federal courthouse was a different kind of intimidating than family court. I sat in the witness box facing not just Ian and Deborah, but a jury of 12 people who would decide their fate. Mrs. Santiago, the prosecutor began, please tell us when you first became aware of the financial irregularities at your father-in-law's company. I glanced at Travis, sitting between Andrea and Isla in the gallery, absorbed in his colouring book. 3 months had passed since the custody hearing, and he'd grown so much stronger, happier. It started with the custody case, I explained. They tried to use forged documents to take my son, but my husband had already discovered their scheme. Objection, Ian's new lawyer called out. Speculation about the deceased's knowledge. Overruled, the judge said. Continue. I held up Casey's journal. My husband documented everything. The fake companies, the offshore accounts, the money laundering. He knew they'd try to discredit him, so he created a failsafe. The prosecutor displayed Casey's sworn statement on the courtroom screens. This statement, witnessed by Judge Reynolds, details over $50 million in embezzled funds. Can you tell us how you found this evidence? My son, I said, smiling at Travis, found the key to a lockbox containing the final proof. Casey had hidden it somewhere he knew only I would think to look. Ian's face contorted with rage. Deborah dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, her perfect makeup finally cracking. The prosecutor presented more documents. These bank records show regular transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, all authorized by the defendant, Ian Santiago. Mrs. Santiago, did your husband explain why he began investigating these transfers? Yes. He discovered that client funds were being diverted, properties were being purchased at inflated prices, and the difference was being pocketed through shell companies. And when he confronted his father, Ian threatened to destroy him. I met my father-in-law's gaze. Casey recorded that conversation too. The courtroom speakers crackled with Casey's voice. Dad, this has to stop. What you're doing is illegal. Ian's recorded voice replied, "You ungrateful little... I built this company. Everything you have is because of me. Cross me, and I'll make sure you lose it all." Deborah broke down, sobbing. Ian's attorney requested a recess, but the judge denied it. "Mrs. Santiago," the prosecutor continued, "what happened after this confrontation?" A week later, Casey died in a car accident. His brakes failed. The jury stirred. This was new information. The FBI had only recently concluded their investigation into Casey's death. "Objection!" Ian's lawyer shouted. "This is prejudicial." "Your Honor," the prosecutor countered, "we have the FBI's forensic report confirming tampering with the victim's vehicle." The judge allowed it. Ian's face went pale. "Mrs. Santiago, what do you believe was your husband's ultimate goal in gathering this evidence?" "He wanted to protect our son," I said, my voice steady. "He knew what they were capable of. He knew they'd try to take Travis to maintain control of the company. So he left us a way to fight back." The prosecutor nodded. No further questions. During cross-examination, Ian's lawyer tried to paint Casey as unstable, me as vindictive, but the evidence was too strong, the paper trail too clear. When the jury returned after only 2 hours of deliberation, Travis had fallen asleep in Andrea's lap. "On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find?" "Guilty." "On the count of money laundering?" "Guilty." "On the count of witness tampering?" "Guilty." Count after count, the word guilty rang through the courtroom. When they reached the final charge, conspiracy to commit murder, I held my breath. Guilty. I watched as federal marshals led Ian and Deborah away in handcuffs. They wouldn't be eligible for parole for at least 20 years. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us again, but Isla's PR team created a path through them. Andrea carried sleeping Travis to the car while I made a brief statement. "My husband died trying to expose the truth," I said into the microphones. Today, that truth finally came to light. Later that evening at home, I found Travis in Casey's office looking at his father's photo. "Daddy was a hero, wasn't he?" he asked. I sat beside him, pulling him close. "Yes, baby. He protected us even when he couldn't be here. Like a guardian angel?" "Exactly like that." My phone buzzed. A message from Andrea. "Federal seizure of assets approved. Travis's trust fund restored. Everything Ian stole goes back to the victims." I looked at Casey's photo, at his kind eyes and knowing smile. He'd left us everything we needed. Evidence, allies, and most importantly, the strength to fight. "Mom," Travis asked, "can we get ice cream?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Yes, baby, we can get ice cream." Justice had been served, but more importantly, our future was finally our own. The morning sun streamed through Casey's office window as I packed the last of the court documents into storage boxes. Travis sat at his father's desk, carefully arranging action figures between stacks of papers. "Mom, look what I found." He held up a small photo that had slipped behind the desk. It showed Casey and me at that coffee shop where we first met, both of us laughing over spilled cappuccino. My phone buzzed. Andrea calling. "Have you seen the news?" I switched on the office TV. A reporter stood outside Ian's former company headquarters. "In a shocking development, federal investigators have uncovered similar fraud schemes at 3 other major corporations, all linked to offshore accounts identified in the Santiago case." "Your story didn't just take down Ian," Andrea said. "It's causing a domino effect. The FBI is calling it the biggest corporate fraud bust in a decade." Travis tugged at my sleeve. "Can we hang Daddy's picture in my room now?" "Of course, baby." I turned back to the phone. "Andrea, I need to go. Travis and I have some redecorating to do." "Wait, check your email first. Someone wants to talk to you." I opened my laptop to find a message from a major publishing house. They wanted me to write a book about our story. Not just the legal battle, but the human side. How a mother and son found strength in the truth their father left behind. "What do you think?" Andrea asked. I watched Travis carefully removing Casey's photo from its frame. People need to know they can fight back, that the truth matters. The doorbell rang. Isla stood on the porch with a moving box labelled Casey's Notes. "Found these at my lake house," she said. "Thought you might want them for the book." "How did you know about—" "Please," she smirked. "Who do you think recommended you to the publisher?" Travis ran to hug her. "Aunt Isla! Want to help me hang Daddy's picture?" While they headed upstairs, I opened the box. Inside were Casey's handwritten notes about his investigation, but also personal letters he'd written to Travis, one for each birthday until he turned 18. "He really did think of everything," Isla said, returning downstairs. "Mom," Travis called. "Come see." In his room, Travis had created a memory wall. Casey's photo hung in the center, surrounded by drawings, ticket stubs, and small mementos. He'd even added the newspaper clipping about Ian's conviction, though I suspected he didn't fully understand it yet. "It's perfect," I said, hugging him. My phone chimed with a text from Judge Reynolds. "Thought you'd want to know. Your case inspired 3 other whistleblowers to come forward. You're starting a movement." Isla read the message over my shoulder. She's right. People are talking about standing up to corruption, about fighting for their families. "I just wanted to protect my son," I said. "And you did more than that," Isla replied. "You showed others they could protect theirs too." Travis pulled out Casey's old copy of The Great Gatsby, the book he'd been reading when we met. "Can you read this to me?" "That's a bit advanced for you, buddy." "Please." Daddy wrote notes in it. I opened the book, finding Casey's familiar scribbles in the margins. He'd underlined one passage. "They were careless people. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness." "How about we start with these instead?" I pulled out the birthday letters. Travis settled into my lap as I opened the first envelope. Casey's words filled the room. "Dear Travis, by the time you read this, you might understand why I had to fight. But what I want you to know most is how much I love you." Isla quietly excused herself as Travis and I read letter after letter, each one revealing more of Casey's heart, his hopes, his determination to protect us even after he was gone. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the window when we finished the last letter. Travis had fallen asleep, clutching his father's photo. My laptop screen glowed with the publisher's email, cursor blinking in the reply box. I began typing, "I'll tell our story. Not just about corruption and justice, but about a father's love, a mother's strength, and a little boy who helped uncover the truth by finding a key in the roots of an old oak tree." Outside, life went on. Companies reformed their practices, whistleblowers came forward, families found their voices. But in that quiet room, holding my sleeping son, I felt Casey's presence stronger than ever. We'd done more than survive. We'd helped change things. And somewhere I knew Casey was smiling. Knew Casey was smiling. Knew Casey was smiling. Knew Casey was smiling. Knew Casey was smiling.